Have you ever been verbally attacked by someone and wished you knew exactly what to say to turn the tables without escalating the situation? What if I told you there are 6 specific verbal techniques that can make even the most aggressive person feel genuinely sorry for their behavior, often within minutes? These aren't manipulation tactics or ways to be cruel in return. These are psychological strategies rooted in human nature that can completely shift the dynamic of any confrontation. By the end of this video, you'll have a toolkit that could transform how you handle aggressive people forever. Picture this scenario. You're at work and a colleague starts yelling at you in front of everyone, blaming you for something that wasn't even your fault. Your heart starts racing, your face gets hot, and every instinct tells you to fight back or run away. But what if instead of doing either, you could use one simple phrase that would make them stop mid-sentence, realize how they're acting, and actually apologize? This isn't fantasy. This is exactly what happened to Sarah, a marketing manager I know, when she used technique number 3 on her notoriously difficult boss. The truth is, most of us handle aggressive people all wrong. We either become aggressive ourselves, creating an escalating war of words, or we become passive and let them walk all over us. Both responses actually encourage the aggressive behavior to continue. But there's a third option that most people never consider, and it's devastatingly effective. Before we dive into these 6 techniques, let me be crystal clear about something. These methods work because they tap into fundamental aspects of human psychology that aggressive people rarely expect. When someone is being verbally aggressive, they're operating from a place of emotional intensity. They're expecting you to either cower or fight back. When you do neither, and instead respond with one of these techniques, it creates what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. Their brain literally doesn't know how to process your response, which forces them to step back and reconsider their behavior. The first technique is called the empathy mirror, and it's probably the most counterintuitive thing you'll ever do when someone is attacking you verbally. Instead of defending yourself or attacking back, you're going to reflect their emotion back to them with genuine concern. Here's how it works. When someone is yelling at you, saying something like, "You completely screwed this up, and now we're all going to suffer because of your incompetence," your natural response might be to defend your actions or point out their own mistakes. But instead, you're going to say something like, "I can see you're really stressed about this situation. It must be incredibly frustrating to feel like things are falling apart." Notice what just happened there. You didn't agree with their assessment of you, but you acknowledged the emotion behind their aggression. This technique works because aggressive people are often driven by underlying feelings of fear, stress, or helplessness. When you acknowledge these feelings without judgment, it catches them completely off guard. They were prepared for a fight, not for someone to actually see their pain. Most of the time, this response will cause them to pause, take a breath, and often soften their approach immediately. I've seen this technique stop screaming matches dead in their tracks. The aggressive person suddenly realizes they're being heard and understood, which is often what they were desperately trying to achieve through their aggression in the first place. The key is that your empathy must be genuine. If you're being sarcastic or condescending, it will backfire spectacularly. The second technique is called the responsibility redirect, and it's particularly powerful when dealing with someone who's trying to blame you for everything that's gone wrong. This technique involves taking partial responsibility for the situation, but in a way that redirects the conversation towards solutions rather than blame. For example, if someone is yelling, "This is all your fault and now everything is ruined," instead of defending yourself, you might say, "You know what? You're right that I played a role in how this turned out. What do you think would be the best way for us to move forward from here?" This response is brilliant for several reasons. First, by taking partial responsibility, you're removing the adversarial dynamic. The aggressive person can't continue attacking someone who's already acknowledged their contribution to the problem. Second, by immediately shifting to solution mode, you're changing the entire frame of the conversation from blame to problem solving. Most aggressive people will find themselves automatically shifting into collaborative mode because that's where your response has led them. The third technique is perhaps the most powerful of all, and it's called the curious observer. This involves responding to aggression with genuine curiosity about the person's perspective, as if you're a scientist studying an interesting phenomenon. When someone is being verbally aggressive, you respond with something like, "That's really interesting. Help me understand your thinking here. What specifically happened that led you to this conclusion?" This technique is devastatingly effective because it does several things simultaneously. It positions you as the calm, rational person in the conversation. It forces the aggressive person to explain their reasoning, which often helps them realize their reaction might be disproportionate. And it shows that you're genuinely interested in understanding their perspective, which disarms their defensive posture. I once watched a friend use this technique on a road rage incident. Another driver had gotten out of his car and was screaming about how my friend had cut him off. Instead of arguing, my friend said, "I can see you're really upset about this. Help me understand what I did so I can make sure it doesn't happen again." The other driver literally stopped mid-sentence, explained his perspective, and ended up apologizing for yelling. The fourth technique is called the emotional Aikido, borrowing from the martial art that redirects an opponent's force rather than meeting it head-on. When someone is being verbally aggressive, you're going to acknowledge the strength of their feelings while redirecting that energy toward a more productive outcome. For instance, if someone says, "You never listen to anyone and you always think you know better than everyone else," you might respond with, "I can feel how passionate you are about this. That kind of intensity tells me this really matters to you." What would need to happen for you to feel heard in this situation? This technique works because you're not denying or minimizing their feelings, but you're also not accepting their characterization of you. Instead, you're redirecting their emotional energy toward identifying what they actually need. Most aggressive people will find themselves automatically shifting from attack mode to explanation mode because you've given them a pathway to express their real concerns. The fifth technique is called the time bridge, and it's particularly effective when dealing with someone who's clearly overwhelmed and lashing out. This involves acknowledging that this might not be the best time for the conversation and offering to revisit it when emotions aren't running so high. You might say something like, "I can see this is really important to you, and I want to give it the attention it deserves. I'm wondering if we might both be in a better headspace to tackle this if we took a short break and came back to it in an hour." This technique is powerful because it accomplishes several important things. It shows respect for the importance of their concerns. It demonstrates emotional intelligence by recognizing that timing matters for productive conversations. And it gives both parties a chance to cool down and approach the situation more rationally. Most aggressive people, when offered this kind of respectful pause, will realize they were indeed too heated to have a productive conversation. The sixth and final technique is called the strength acknowledgement, and it involves finding something genuine to appreciate about the person, even in the midst of their aggressive behavior. This might sound impossible, but it's often the most transformative technique of all. For example, if someone is yelling at you about a project deadline, you might say, "I can see how much you care about this project succeeding. Your dedication to getting things right is actually one of the things I respect about you." This technique works because aggressive people are often operating from a place of insecurity or feeling unappreciated. When you acknowledge their positive qualities even while they're being difficult, it creates an immediate shift in their emotional state. They suddenly remember that they're not just someone who's angry, but someone who has value and is appreciated. This realization often leads to immediate regret about their aggressive behavior. Now, let me share a crucial point about all these techniques. They work best when you genuinely mean what you're saying. If you're using them as manipulation tactics while harboring resentment or anger, people will sense your insincerity and the techniques will lose their effectiveness. The goal isn't to manipulate aggressive people, but to create genuine human connection even in difficult moments. Also, these techniques require practice. In the heat of the moment, when someone is yelling at you, it's natural to want to defend yourself or attack back. Training yourself to respond with empathy, curiosity, or acknowledgement instead takes conscious effort and repeated practice. Start by using these techniques in lower-stakes situations so they become more natural when you really need them. It's also important to recognize that these techniques won't work in every situation. If someone is being abusive or threatening, your priority should be your safety, not trying to change their behavior. These techniques are most effective with people who are fundamentally decent but are having a bad moment or are overwhelmed by stress. One of the most beautiful things about these techniques is that they often lead to stronger relationships rather than damaged ones. When you respond to someone's worst moment with empathy and understanding, they often remember it for years. They realize that you're someone who can be trusted to handle conflict with grace, which actually makes them more likely to come to you with problems before they reach the point of aggressive outbursts. I want to share one more story about the power of these techniques. A teacher I know had a parent storm into her classroom, screaming about grades and accusing her of being unfair to their child. Instead of getting defensive, the teacher used the empathy mirror technique, saying, "I can see how concerned you are about your child's success. It's clear you're a parent who really cares." The parent immediately broke down in tears and explained that they were going through a divorce and felt like they were failing their child in every way. What started as an aggressive confrontation turned into a productive conversation about how they could work together to support the child. The key to mastering these techniques is understanding that aggressive behavior is almost always a symptom of something else: fear, stress, feeling unheard, feeling powerless, or feeling overwhelmed. When you can look past the aggressive behavior and respond to the underlying emotion, you create the possibility for real human connection even in the most difficult moments. Remember, the goal isn't to win the argument or to prove that you're right. The goal is to diffuse the aggression and create space for genuine communication. Sometimes this means the aggressive person will apologize immediately. Other times, they might not apologize in the moment, but will approach you later with a much different attitude. And sometimes, they'll simply stop being aggressive and move toward collaborative problem-solving. These 6 techniques have the power to transform not just individual conversations, but entire relationships and even workplace cultures. When you consistently respond to aggression with empathy, curiosity, and genuine human connection, you model a different way of handling conflict that others will often adopt as well. The next time someone is verbally aggressive toward you, resist the urge to fight back or shut down. Instead, try one of these techniques. See what happens when you respond to their worst moment with your best self. You might be surprised by how quickly aggression can transform into apology, and conflict can become connection.